All right, Areno, welcome back. Tim's IT Straight Talk. In this episode, I want to talk about overcoming test-taking anxiety. Specifically, because my primary audience, I'm guessing, is IT professionals, let's use IT certification exams as our case study. The idea here is that these are computer-based exams. They're high stakes because they cost a lot of money. Even if your employer is sponsoring you, there's that sense of responsibility. What if I don't pass? What does that mean regarding my HR file or my next performance review? You see what I mean? Some people feel the test-taking anxiety because of the time pressure. You're faced with having to think and read and analyze in a high-stakes, expensive environment, and you have a timer literally ticking down before your very eyes. Yeah, it's intense. And I'll probably use Microsoft certification program as my case study example. A lot of the Microsoft cert exams involve a lot of data analysis, a lot of reading, interpretation. You need to be on your game and focused. And if you're not, it can take a toll. I will offer as I've got a number of tips for you. Tip 0 would be never guess. At least with computer-based IT exams and specifically the Microsoft certification exams, you're not penalized when you answer a question incorrectly. You're just not getting points. Now, you'll have to read the details on your specific vendor's program, but the way Microsoft works is that you get partial credit when items have more than one correct answer. And if you're going to run out of time, never leave an item unanswered. If you have to guess, guess. Guessing is better than leaving a question unanswered because if you leave a question unanswered, you have a 100% chance of not getting any points for that item. If you guess, you have a greater than 0% probability of getting at least 1 point for that item. So guess in a pinch and don't feel bad about it. First tip I have, I've just jotted these down before I started recording, are to invest in IT certification practice exams. I'm not talking about illegal brain dumps. I'm talking about practice tests from vendors like MeasureUp, WizLabs, Udemy, you can find them. That might be another subject for another video, actually. Choosing an IT cert practice exam. I like how I get ideas for new episodes while recording a current one. That's convenient. Hope it continues. The reason for these practice exams is manyfold, actually. Chiefly, though, from an exam anxiety standpoint, you're able to get into the zone when you're taking these practice tests, or at least you get opportunities to practice getting in the certification testing zone. And that's where your attention is 100% concentrated on the item. And you're able to have that clearness, that zen, where you're reading and interpreting and you're just working through these items and not getting all the static. See, that's where test anxiety can take you. It creates static in your brain that, depending on how big that static storm can be, can blot out your ability to be rational and logical and focused and on task, you see. So practice exams is a good tip because it gives you that, like riding a bicycle with training wheels, an opportunity to get in and out of the exam zone. Second tip is for you to take out insurance. What do I mean by that? Well, some vendors, Microsoft being the one I'm talking about in particular, have a program called Exam Replay, where if you're willing to pay above list price for the certification exam registration, they will give you a voucher if you don't pass the exam on your attempt, on your initial attempt, you see? So for some exams, I know with the Microsoft portfolio, I would never recommend somebody do Exam Replay for a 900 series exam because number one, the cost of those exams is a lot less than higher level exams. And number two, the Exam Replay is significantly above list for the exam, you see? So I would definitely recommend it for the associate and expert level certifications. But that can be helpful, knowing that if you don't earn a passing score on your initial attempt, that you have that insurance policy, you have that second voucher so that you can bone up on what you were missing during that initial attempt, register to take the exam again at a net cost of zero, because the voucher will bring the registration cost down to zero. It's a good thing. Tip 3 is know that things can only get better. And my idea with that tip is, I know that when I'm teaching, for example, the worst delivery I'll likely ever give is the first and maybe the first couple deliveries of a new class. Why? Because it's brand new, it's uncharted, it's untested, and so forth. Same thing with taking IT certification exams. And like that simile, it's like riding a bike or learning to ride a bicycle. The more of these IT certification exams you take, the more familiar you are with the process. It becomes almost a muscle memory over time with enough experience. So I hope that you can take some hope that, if nothing else, your familiarity with the process hopefully will have a tempering effect, a tamping down effect on your anxiety level. Tip 4, I've got one more after this, is breathe and meditate. This is a big one. By practicing breathing, I encourage you to look into the box breathing technique. It's where you envision a square, a box, in your mind. And when you breathe in, you're filling in one side of the outer perimeter of the box. And then when you pause for a minute, that's the next part of the box. And then you exhale, that's the third part of the box. And then you pause before your next breath. Ideally, you're doing an equilateral square so that you're pausing and breathing around the same time. And the mental energy that it takes to visualize the box contributes to the practice and can distract you from your test anxiety momentarily, but also breathing consistently. I know that if I'm anxious, I'll oftentimes forget to breathe. By focusing intentionally on my breathing, it's ensuring that I'm feeding my brain with as much oxygen as possible, which is, of course, a good thing. Meditate, if you're into that kind of thing, that could be as simple and as informal as, before you go in to sit for the exam, just take 5 minutes and just sit quietly in an area that's comfortable, that's conducive to serenity. When I used to go to the testing center in Nashville, the testing center was in a pretty nice looking office park, and I would sometimes sit outside because there was a garden with a fountain, and I would just sit there and listen to the babbling fountain, the water bubbles, and just do some breathing and try to clear my head. And taking that time, again, it's a practice thing where you get better at it and it becomes more natural to do and less awkward with more practice. That can all facilitate eventually getting into that focus zone when you start the exam and you're fully present and you see these gnarly case studies with a whole bunch of reading and you're on it. You're reading that and you're picking it up and you're responding to the questions. Final tip I have is for you to consider using mnemonic devices or whatever you use to memorize new information, and construct a brain dump. And I use that term sort of tongue-in-cheek. Of course, I'm not talking about stolen live production certification exams. I'm literally talking about a brain dump. In other words, haven't done this in a while, but in the past, I found it useful. Like when I was doing Cisco, I was a Cisco specialist many years ago. And there, a lot of times, there are product and model tables, just basically a lot of tabular info that you just simply needed to have in your head. And it gave me a lot of comfort that when I would come in to take my live exam, whether it was in a testing center or at home, when you're in a testing center, you have a physical whiteboard and a dry erase marker. If you're taking the exam online, there should be an electronic whiteboard, and you can put down anything on that. So the idea is you spend time memorizing all the core stuff that you just want to make sure you have straight in your head. A good example would be the OSI layers if you're preparing to take the CompTIA Network Plus certification exam. And the first thing you do when you get into the exam session is whip out that dry erase board, whether it's electronic or physical, and dump your brain of all of those things that you spent time developing mnemonics to remember. And looking back on it, it isn't often that I would use the contents of that brain dump, but the fact that it was there in itself gave me some comfort that if I had a total brain lockup, I had the OSI layers written down there so I could refer to my notes. That's not cheating. That's totally legal with any IT certification exam. So that's what I've got for you. I hope that you found that beneficial. I look forward to hearing your feedback if you've got any. In the meantime, I'll see you next episode. Take care.